And welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Pinstripe Prospects podcast, episode 2 of season 2. And we are back. Pitchers and catchers are in Tampa, Florida for spring training. A lot of news down in Tampa. We're going to get into that throughout the show. Of course, we got to talk about the Houston Astros and their apology on Thursday. So we're going to have a lot of fun with that. We'll talk about this proposal for the postseason, some new rules. We'll get into the James Paxton injury since that's happened since we last were on the air. We'll also get into our top 5 storylines heading into spring training as position players will report next week. And Saturday the 22nd, we're going to have some games, and that's going to be a lot of fun to talk about. Of course, we thank all of you who tuned in to the relaunch episode last week. Remember, you can follow us on Twitter at Pinstripe Pros, like us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, give us that popular 5-star rating, send us feedback. What do you like about the show? What you don't like? What segments you want to hear? What guests you want to hear? Feel free to chime in. And also we have a voicemail number. So if you have an opinion throughout the week you want to get out, feel free to call our new number, 908-376-6360. Again, that's 908-376-6360 to have your voice heard on the show. And joining me this week is my partner, James O'Connell. James, welcome back. How are you?
I'm phenomenal, Ricky. Spring training finally starting, pitchers and catchers reporting. Baseball's in the air, man. It's coming soon, and I can't wait to get it going.
Absolutely. Finally going to get some games, which is great. But, of course, before we get into the Yankees, we have to talk about the Astros apology today. And what you're not – obviously, you can't see us, but I'm doing apology in air quotes because it really was not an apology. You had Jim Crane, the owner, Dusty Baker, the manager, on the dais, and you had the 2 worst possible players you could have on the dais, and Jose Altuve and Alex Bregman. But I'll get into that in a little bit. But I'm going to have James go first on his thoughts on what went down in West Palm Beach today.
So there's a lot to kind of digest here with this situation. First, I kind of want to start with this situation as a whole. I'm not oblivious. I don't think that the Houston Astros were the only team in baseball electronically stealing signs. However, I do believe that the Houston Astros were the only teams delivering and stealing signs in real time and giving it to their batters and saying what pitch is coming. So with that being said, the apologies today, I heard Jose Altuve kind of by his locker in the clubhouse. He sounded, decently genuine. Carlos Correa took the blame on himself. The Athletic came out with a ridiculous article that AJ Hinch and everyone else in the clubhouse felt intimidated by Carlos Beltran, felt that he couldn't be stopped. But Carlos Correa put a stop to that and kind of what we all thought, like, if you're the manager in the room, obviously you have more authority over a player. That's a ridiculous thing. However, those apologies were okay. I wasn't, no matter what you hear from the Astros, you're not going to think it's genuine because of what went on. But Jim Crane, what are you doing? It didn't impact the game. Are you outside of your mind? Delivering signs to your batter in real time, letting them know what pitch is coming at the exact moment it's coming doesn't impact the game. And then you try to follow up saying, "Oh no, I didn't say it didn't impact the game. You just said it 5 seconds ago. What are you doing?" And shout out to Bradford William Davis of the Daily News. He threw out an article, former colleague of mine. He said the top 4 Jim Crane quotes. Number 1, it didn't impact the game. 2, I didn't say it didn't impact the game. 3, I'm not clear on the details. And then his personal favorite, I don't think I should be held accountable. You are the owner of the baseball team. You oversee everything. You should know what's going on in and outside of that locker room. To say you don't think you should be held accountable, and then when being asked a question about the Yankees specifically, to say it didn't impact the game and we won the World Series and that's that. Well, that is just absurd. And Jim Crane ought to really be ashamed of himself from the performance he put on down in Florida this afternoon. It was so cringeworthy. The whole situation is cringeworthy, but Jim Crane just dug himself a hole 10 feet deeper than he was already in. So that's kind of where I stand on what went down today.
It was quite the contrast from when Jim Crane got up there the day that the commissioner's report came out and fired Jeff Luhnow and fired AJ Hinch and kind of looked like not the good guy, but not the bad guy and everything, and how quickly things change in 3 weeks. I'll take a different stand. Jose Altuve and Alex Bregman being up there for 40 seconds, the same two guys that 6 days after the report came out on FanFest or at FanFest didn't really apologize at all. And like, oh, I need more time. You had a week. Now I gave you 3 extra weeks. I let you have a day where they blocked off everybody at the facility to plan some strategy. That didn't work at all. Mm-hmm. They speak for 40 seconds, and those are the wrong two guys. If you I'll give the Astros PR a little advice. Put George Springer and Carlos Correa on that podium, and I might believe you. I just might believe you. But they put the wrong two guys there. They clearly are not that contrite. I get you on Correa. I kind of agree. I think he was the best one out of all of them because Justin Verlander saying I should have said more. He's never afraid to say more. He says more about other people on other teams than he says on his own team. So forget what he says. It was all most of it was a joke. And honestly, it didn't lead anybody to not believe. If you believe there are buzzers, you did not come away thinking there aren't buzzers.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, I don't like speculating, but there is no doubt in my mind. Well, not even speculation at this point. It's out there. There's no doubt in my mind that we're using buzzers. Like I think we're all, as a society, as a collective group of baseball fans, we are all in agreement, with the exception of maybe the Astros fan base, that these guys were using buzzers. Specifically, the Jose Altuve thing. And we're going to get into the Yankees' reaction to this, but not wanting to take off his shirt for what reason? What's under that shirt? I think we all know what's under that shirt. We're all in agreement that there was buzzers. And you, to kind of go back to your point on how Bregman and Altuve were on the stand and like they drew out this whole plan. Well, that's all courtesy of Jim Crane. It honestly feels like Jim Crane is in complete and utter panic mode, and rightfully so. This happened under his watch, and he shouldn't get away with it one bit.
So getting into the Yankees side of things, and you've had Aaron Boone make his comments over the last 2 days. Well, he hasn't really talked. He texted A.J. Hinch, but never really had a phone call to A.J. Hinch, and those guys are close, so that's telling of itself. Mm-hmm. He had his comments about Jim Crane saying, I kind of would disagree with him on what Jim Crane said on Thursday. You look at Gary Sanchez saying they could take my pants off if I hit a home run in games to get to the World Series, which was classic Gary Sanchez. That was an awesome quote. So what leads me to this, James, is this point here. The Yankees have every right to be upset, and they should be upset. And all of you fans out there should be upset. I'm not going to take the title. I'm not going to say you would have won the title in 17 or won the title in 19, but you have every right to be upset. But at what point do the Yankees have to move on to avoid this being like something that takes their focus away from their goal in 2020?
Yeah, I genuinely believe they're all moved on in their own personal sense. You had an entire offseason to digest it, but once you get to spring training, you obviously have to address it, that you were cheated out of potentially 2 World Series appearances, not victories. And obviously you cannot guarantee they would beat the Dodgers or the Nationals. But so I think as a group, they're over it. But I don't know, man. It's a tough pill to swallow if you're a Yankee player because, like, even David Robertson was chiming in. Like, he said in 2017 that was a special group, and he'll never get a chance to play that back. And courtesy of Jim Crane, do we know what happened after if the Astros weren't stealing signs? No, we don't know exactly what would have happened, but we have a pretty good idea that the Houston Astros probably wouldn't have had as dominant of a run had they not been stealing signs electronically. So these Yankees players have every right to be absolutely upset in whatever emotion they want to feel because they were almost robbed of really achieving something special. And they've had some real good teams over the course of the last 3 years. And the Red Sox just happened to be better in 2018, but you lose to the Astros in 2017, 2019. And these guys, the same team that eliminated your chance from going to the next round when you were 1 or 2 games away from hitting that World Series. And man, it's a tough pill to swallow for these guys. But back to your point, I think they're over it. I think they're all pretty much over it. Now I think it's kind of fuel to the fire. Now I think they use this as, all right, well, now let's go get it. Like, let's go after them. Because you can't sit and mope about getting cheated, but you just signed Garrett Cole. You have all these guys come back, Giancarlo Stanton coming off injury. You have a full, for the most part, except James Paxton, you have a full roster coming back. And these guys should be pissed off, and I expect that to translate onto the diamond and not into their heads.
You look back at that Game 6 in 2017, David Robertson allowed 4 runs in that 8th inning. The Astros scored 4 runs in a game only twice in that series. And one of those runs was a home run off Jose Altuve, which if you look at the game day pitch tracker, I looked at it today, there's a 1-2 curveball that's down. I think it's down and in that he takes. And then the next pitch, he hits a home run.
Yeah,
so I can understand why Robertson's upset, because that was arguably one of the worst postseason games of his career in a series where runs were hard to come by.
Yeah, and you know who should be honestly the most pissed is Adam Ottavino from last year. Last year, you were scared to put Ottavino into a game because really nobody was swinging at his stuff, and especially with Ottavino stuff. If you know his slider is coming, you're not going to swing at it because it's not a strike. The whole deception of Adam Ottavino's slider is that it starts in the middle of the zone and it ends 15 feet outside of the batter's box and people are swinging at it. But if you know that's coming, you're not swinging at it. And that's his best pitch. And the Astros might have taken away his best pitch last year. So Adam Ottavino should be absolutely livid. I'm sure he is, but he didn't really express it to the media with I don't really know if he was asked about it today. But that's a guy where you essentially take him off the mound. One of the Yankees' most valuable relievers. You took him off the mound. You can't put him in because you know his slider is coming his best pitch. And you're not going to swing at it because why would you?
It also doesn't help the Yankees in terms of moving on that more reports leak out after the commissioner's report. Like you have the great reporting by Jared Diamond in the Wall Street Journal about Code Breaker and the algorithms. You have the report you mentioned, James, from Ken Rosenthal and Evan Drellick, how Carlos Beltran's the godfather, which I guess the Astros won't go to him for any favors anymore, but that's besides the point. I think it also doesn't help. And honestly, we're a Yankee podcast. This doesn't help the Red Sox. Because if it looks like, first off, the report for them hasn't come out yet. It was supposed to by now. They had to hire an interim manager because they don't know what's coming. And if it comes out light for them, they're going to not get a pass for it being light because the commissioner's report screwed up.
Yeah, pertaining to the Red Sox, that Ron Roenicke is their interim manager, and honestly, I think I saw a report that's saying they really don't have much on the 2018 Red Sox. There's not really much there. That's why they're not really out with it yet. That's just from what I've seen on Twitter or wherever. But I honestly, with the new reports, with you said with the Code Breaker and with the Athletic article and stuff like that, it makes it sound less and less like Alex Cora was the mastermind behind this thing. I haven't heard Alex Cora mentioned since he was fired from the Red Sox. I haven't heard the people I've heard the most. The person I've heard the most is Jeff Luhnow. Jeff Luhnow actually seemed to be the mastermind behind this whole thing. So back to the Red Sox, I'm not saying that Alex Cora is going to come back, but I'm not going to rule it out because you have Ron Roenicke, who's the interim manager, and I guess they're waiting for the investigation to conclude. But if Alex Cora's name continues to be kind of cleared, like it's kind of being now, because Jeff Luhnow came out with that statement that the the bench coach, whatever, was the mastermind behind it. Didn't even name Alex Cora in his report. But if reports keep coming out that Alex Cora is missing from the report, then why exactly did the Red Sox move on from him? He didn't do any of the stuff in Boston. He happened to be a part of it in Houston. So I don't know. I think that whole interim manager with Ron Roenicke, could you take that interim tag off and bring Alex Cora back after he serves a 1-year suspension? Because he didn't do the Red Sox any wrong. So why not consider bringing him back? So it's an interesting topic to talk about.
So while we've been under all these sign-stealing investigations, Major League Baseball unveiled some new rules for this season, including the 3-batter minimum, the 26 players on your roster, including 13 pitchers. In September, it's 28 players with no more than 14 pitchers. You now can't bring in a position player to pitch unless you're down by 6 runs or something along those lines, and managers have 20 seconds to challenge, which we all knew those rules going in. It was just made official this week. The big one is the new postseason proposal where the 1 seed gets a bye. There's like 4 wild cards, and there's a selection show where you get to pick the team you want to play. That's just so exciting, where a 100-win team can play an 82-win team in a best-of-3 and make the regular season even more meaningless. It's so stupid. I don't know what they're thinking there. I get they want TV, even though you'll find out on Twitter who picks who. It's crazy. And it's really why do I have to find new ways to get Mike Trout's Angels into the playoffs when they have no pitching? James, I don't get it.
I'm not usually an angry person. I know this podcast we're talking about the Astros, we're talking about now the new rule. I'm usually not an angry person, but we're discussing some topics that are absolutely enraging. So I'm going to come off as angry. Rob Manfred, another guy, what are you doing? And I think I know what he's doing. He's trying to divert from this whole Astros scandal, how he didn't give the playoffs, the players a punishment. This entire thing has to be a diversion because there's no way in his mind that he thinks this is a good idea, letting half the teams in from each league make the playoffs. That is like, in what world is that a good idea? So it's a diversion. And honestly, I know he's controversial, but I thank Trevor Bauer for that post he put on Twitter. He hit on some enormous points, how baseball doesn't market their players well enough, how they don't allow us to tweet highlights and stuff like that. Their focus, if this is a legitimate idea, and I don't think it is, because I don't think Rob Manfred's stupid by any means. I just think he's really having a bad go of things recently. Trevor Bauer is so right that they're focusing on the wrong things. And everyone's saying, oh, we got to get the younger generation to be, so we got to make it more fun to watch. No, leave baseball as it is. Baseball is fine. Baseball is a generational sport. It's America's pastime. Why are you changing the actual product in the field? We love the product on the field. Sure, you've added some phenomenal things. The replay review, that has absolutely enhanced the game, and it's getting with the times. But this whole game time management, this whole the new playoff, what are you doing? Like, leave it the way it is. And I'm sure I might sound like an old man screaming at a cloud, but because the extra wild card team, the one that the additional wild card team had the wild card game, that was a great addition. I think we were all screaming for that. We all think that's a great idea. But now he's just really trying to do too much. He's trying to appeal to a crowd that probably isn't going to become a diehard baseball fan anyway. So he's wasting his time on all these other things that don't matter. Leave the game alone. Leave that by itself. Focus on how you can market your baseball players better than you are now. Not how you can change the game, but focus on that.
Focus on fixing minor league baseball. Focus on giving players more money. Like, there are more things you can focus on than changing up this postseason format, which isn't official yet. Who knows if it'll go through or not. But there's a thing where I don't think it exactly helps the whole anti-tanking thing, because this isn't exactly going to push more owners to spend money or to make big trades or anything like that. Because if I'm on the borderline of a best of three, why am I going to make a trade? I just won't really do anything. So I think Manfred here is kind of overreacting to the fact that preseason predictions have become predictable, especially in the American League and over the last couple of years. The National League's getting pretty close to that, although that's been more wide open lately. But I think that teams you already know the haves and have-nots in baseball going in, but the postseason, I think, is really good in baseball because it's unpredictable. Like, who would have thought the Rays would have took the Astros to 5 games last year? Who would have thought all 7 road teams would win in the World Series last year? You never know.
Right. But and I'm going to count. You said that Rob Manfred thinks, obviously, it's getting a little too predictable. The NBA was predictable for a good 5 years. We knew the Golden State Warriors and the Cleveland Cavaliers were going to the finals. We knew that before the season even started. And the NBA was arguably the most popular sport. So predictability isn't necessarily a bad thing. You have the top. Well, I mean, I'm sorry. It is a bad thing, but not in terms of viewership. People are still going to watch baseball. So he's trying to get to I don't know what he's doing. If this is a real idea, not a diversion from the Astros scandal, this is just an absolute mess of an idea for Rob Manfred. And you know what? A lot of people, including myself, kind of felt indifferent about him as a commissioner. Well, now I think he's horrible. How do you not think he's horrible after this whole Astros scandal, whole sign stealing scandal? How do you not think Rob Manfred's a bad commissioner? Is there one person who thinks he's a good commissioner? I don't know. Not at this time.
So let's dive into some Yankees. We got to get into some actual Yankee news, and let's get into James Paxton. Of course, since we were last on the air, James Paxton had a back injury, had surgery on it. He's going to be out for at least May or June. Jack Curry had a tweet on Thursday that Paxton had a cyst removed from a nerve root last week because it was causing sciatica in his left leg. Doctors told him he should be able to throw in 4 to 6 weeks from the date of the surgery. If Paxton begins throwing on the sooner side, he's hopeful of returning by May. Brian Hoke, MLB.com, added that Paxton was told he can resume in 4 to 6 weeks. The Yankees have said he could return to the majors in May or June, but Paxton said he believes May is possible. I remember the news where people like, not again. The Yankees have another pitching injury. It's going to be like last year. But James, I don't really see that much of a cause for concern. If Paxton has to miss 2 months, you honestly don't really need him the first 2 months. You need him in August, September, October. And if anything, if it's just the 2 months, he's more fresh down the road for the postseason, which is the Yankees' ultimate goal. So to me, I'm not rushing him. Take all the time you need. This offense should be able to carry them the first couple months for the back end of the rotation. And that's why you keep J.A. Happ around. You didn't trade him, and he's there now for depth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I get everyone being mad on Twitter saying, oh, here we go again with the injuries. And I myself was like, well, here we go again. We're getting it started early. But honestly, it's not an elbow. Like he said, the big thing getting James Paxton in the trade, oh, well, he's injury prone. Oh, well, he never had an elbow injury or an arm injury. Well, this is still not an elbow arm injury, so it's not really too big of a cause for concern. Sure, back injury could be serious, but I'm confident it's a cyst removal. It's not a whole, Tiger Woods spinal fusion surgery. I'm not necessarily concerned about it, but I would like to see a fully healthy Yankee rotation for a good portion of the season, and that still remains possible. So Paxton, he's going to be missed for his 2 months that he's out, but it's not that he's replaceable. The Yankees can get by without him. They have a good staff now. They have 3 very good starting pitchers and a reliable 4th and hopefully 5th. We'll see.
So now you look at the Yankees, they need a 5th starter. It sounds like Jordan Montgomery is going to be in the driver's seat for that 5th starter spot. They've talked about how it could be an open competition, but James, it's hard to really see anybody but Montgomery getting this job, right?
Yeah, well, he's the easy answer for the 5th spot. But honestly, with all these new analytics people like Matt Blake, who's focused on developing pitchers and stuff like that, the one guy that really has my eye for this 5th spot, and I've always been a big fan of, is Jonathan Loáisiga. He is electric. His stuff is absolutely phenomenal. He ranks in the upper percentile of baseball in fastball spin, fastball velocity, curveball spin. Matt Blake, if he's as advertised, should have a field day with Jonathan Loáisiga. Just from his stuff alone. Hey, Jonathan Loáisiga learned from Garrett Cole. He should really take a step forward, because we saw that little flash in 2018 where he came up for a 4 or 5 game stretch and he was making starts. He has dominant stuff. And Larry Rothschild probably couldn't develop a pitcher really any better than I could at that stage of his career. But I think you get a guy like Matt Blake in here and all these guys who are focused on analytics and the other side, so to speak, the other side of baseball, you might have a really, really nice weapon, Jonathan Loáisiga, as a starter. I know people are saying throw him in the bullpen, but I don't know. His stuff is really, really good. So we'll see where that 5th spot takes us. But again, I think Montgomery is the easy answer. He has the experience, but man, I really want to see Loáisiga get a shot.
I'd agree with you, and I think for him, it's more about trying to find a defined role for him this year, because I love the fact that he was put into some really tough situations against the Astros in Game 2 in extra innings, and in Game 4 when CeCe gets injured, he comes in with bases loaded in the middle of a count against George Springer and does a pretty good job. I mean, that to me shows you the mental toughness that this kid has. I don't think he'll get the 5th starter job, but I would love to either see him either pick a spot in the bullpen for maybe he's your new Chad Green, or you let him get some starts maybe in AAA and you keep him on a starting spot until somebody gets hurt and you're able to call him up then. I think the goal is to find the right spot for him in 2020, starter or reliever, and keep him there.
Yep. No, I agree. I think I really, really do like Jonathan Loáisiga. I always have, as soon as he came up and I saw him hitting 99 with a curveball that drops off the table and starts at your head. It's, I don't know. Something about him really, it just screams, this is a special arm. And just get him in the right hands and maybe you get a special player.
You have to throw, I think Mike King, has a shot here. You know how much the organization loves him. I think he has an outside chance. I don't think Davey Garcia or Clark Schmidt have that much of a shot, but they'll get to compete. But I think if it's not the top 2 guys you mentioned, I think King would have an outside chance. Got a little bit of major league experience last year in the final series of the season. And again, we know how much internally Michael King is loved by this front office.
Yeah. I want to hit on the Clark Schmidt and Davy Garcia point. Yeah, they don't have that great of a shot. Obviously, they're not. There's a path for them to make a big league impact, but is it going to be as a fifth starter? I don't know. I guess it depends on what they look like in spring training. I honestly think that no matter what Davy Garcia does in spring training, he's going to Scranton-Wilkes-Barre. I think no matter what happens there, no matter how well he pitches, he's going back to AAA. But I think if Clark Schmidt really shows up and shows that he's got big league ready stuff, again, he's an older type prospect. There's a shot that if he really shows out that he can maybe be in that final three group for consideration of that for that fifth spot.
So before we get into our top 5 storylines for spring training, we want to tell you that it's a new era over at Pinstripe Prospects, as we now have exclusive minor league content to our paid subscribers with our new Dugout membership program. You'll get scouting reports, player interviews like with Brooks Kriske, Nick Nelson, Tanner Myatt. We have on the website. We have different features. We'll have minor league spring training coverage next month, so you're going to want to subscribe for that, and much more in addition to the free major league coverage that we already provide. Sign up today for our Dugout membership programs. You can subscribe for $7 a month, $63 a year, or $180 for a 3-year membership, and you have the opportunity to enter contests where eventually you'll have game-worn Yankee jerseys. There's cool contests we do on our Twitter page. So if you get a chance, subscribe to us, and you'll get great content over at Pinstripe Prospects. So let's take a look at each one of us has different storylines that we're looking forward to in a spring training. We've heard from a couple of people on Twitter. I know Chris on Twitter mentioned today about Miguel Andujar being a storyline, and we'll get to him, I'm sure, in a little bit. So I want to get into our list. James, I think we'll each go 5. Do we want to go 5 through 1 straight, or just go number 5, both of us that way?
No, we can go through the 5, and then we'll discuss whichever ones we want to discuss.
All right, so let me have you go first. Go 5 through 1. What were you thinking here for your storylines you're watching?
All right, so start from number 5 and going to number 1, right? So start from least to best, kind of here.
Exactly.
All right, so I started with Clint Frazier, and I have next to it just what is his deal? What are we doing with Clint Frazier? There's not a spot on this team for Clint Frazier. Is he just going to go back to Scranton for like the 10th time in the last 2 years? Like, I don't know. I'm just curious what his deal is. Number 4, I got Tyler Wade. Tyler Wade has a clear path to make this team because he's insurance at shortstop if Gleyber Torres really kind of bottoms out over there and can't find his groove back in his old position. And get this, Tyler Wade was hot at the end of the year when they called him up. In 22 games from the end of August to the end of September, basically the end of the year, he slashed 279, 340, 465, leading to an 865 OPS. And he's fast as all hell. So Tyler Wade's got a clear spot on this team. It's just a matter of how well he performs. And if he really shows that he can be a major league bat or a threat in the batter's box, because he hasn't really shown that up until the end of last year. Number 2, I have J-Happ trade chatter. J-Happ entered the year entered the offseason after signing Gerrit Cole as like, well, they're trading J-Happ $17 million off the books, off the salary. There's your way of getting below the third or second threshold. Well, no, now you need J-Happ because James Paxton's down for 2-3 months. So it's interesting. I want to see how he responds. I want to see he performed well at the end of the year, and I kind of just want to see how he responds to all that trade talk. And number 1, I have Giancarlo Stanton. The Yankees have a new $300 million man in town, and it's Gerrit Cole. And 90% of the pressure is going to be on Gerrit Cole to perform. There is some pressure taken off Giancarlo Stanton, and I'm excited to see how he performs as not the main culprit of the New York pressure. So if Giancarlo Stanton can really bounce back and be a contender for comeback player of the year and all that stuff, and hit his 50 bombs and however he does, if Giancarlo Stanton can be Giancarlo Stanton, it's going to be huge for the Yankees, and it's going to be huge for his legacy as a Yankee, because right now there is a 0% chance that Giancarlo Stanton walks into that batter's box and walks out without getting booed unless he puts one to the seats. So he's a guy to watch to me.
Definitely, you and I both have a little bit different storylines. We both agree on Clint Frazier. I have him at number 4 on my list. And it's just, I'll go my 5 through 1, and maybe we'll dive into Frazier a little more. Number 5, I have which non-roster invitee reliever makes the opening day bullpen. We talked a little bit about it last week. David Hale's in camp. Tyler Lyons is in camp. And you have a case where Luis Cessa's out of options. They're going to have to make a choice on him. Ben Heller's got a couple of options. Jonathan Holder still has an option. So the Yankees, there's usually some guy in the bullpen and non-roster invitee that makes a splash and somehow finds a way onto your 26-man roster now. So I wouldn't be surprised if somebody cracks the roster, whether it's through injury or whether it's just pitching well in spring training. So I'll put that at number 5. Number 4, I have Clint Frazier. As I mentioned, we're in a society where you want things right now. Clint Frazier wants things right now. They're going to have to find an answer eventually, or because you know how frustrated he is. Number 3, I'm going with Luke Voit at first base. It's the guy who did not really play at all in the postseason last year. And now with Greg Bird gone, he's in Texas, you would think Voigt's got the job. Mike Ford's right there. And Luke Voit, I think, has to have a really good spring training. Yes, stats are meaningless in spring training. Last year, Voit hit 289, 4 homers, 12 RBI. He's going to, I think, have to have a similar spring to kind of keep that job away from Ford, who is gaining a lot of momentum. So don't be surprised if Ford kind of creeps into the conversation here. Number 2, I got Miguel Andujar and his versatility. It's going to be cool to see him maybe play some left field, play some first base. How he looks defensively is going to be more important than how he looks offensively, because we know how good of an offensive player he is. And number 1 is the 5th starter spot, as we mentioned. Does Jordan Montgomery emerge, or does somebody take it from him, is my number 1. So that's 5 through 1 for me. So let's go with Frazier, because as I mentioned, he's a guy who's impatient. And you would think with Aaron Hicks out, Clint Frazier's got room. No, not really, because Mike Tauchman's still here, and he's pretty good. They bring Brett Gardner back. I don't know what Clint Frazier's thinking, and the longer he's here, the longer his trade value drops.
Yeah, I mean, at this, I know Clint Frazier's perceived as impatient, but I mean, so would I. The dude rakes in AAA. He rakes in the minor leagues, and there's never a path for him to be on this team, and they never trade him. So he is just virtually stuck in AAA. So there's a reason for his frustration, and I can't disagree with him. But the thing I can disagree with is him dropping a fly ball in right field. It's only if he can come to camp and really show that he's made excellent strides defensively, then you got a shot to make the roster. Because don't forget that 26th man, it can come into play however the Yankees would like. So the thing that really you hit on was Tauchman. The problem is Tauchman was hitting with the Yankees. If Tauchman was just a nobody in the box and couldn't hit water if he fell out of a boat, then you'd have an argument. Well, put in Frazier, he can hit. But Tauchman's hitting, and he plays phenomenal defense. So there's not much of an argument you can make for Clint Frazier to make it over a guy like Mike Tauchman. Because, like you said, if you do add if you add Clint Frazier to that open day roster, you're not going to carry 6 outfielders. That's just preposterous. So poor Clint Frazier, I do feel bad for you. But, man, if you didn't just drop some fly balls and call some fly balls, you would be on this team. Because you remember, he was arguably the Yankees' best hitter early in the year. I think on that West Coast trip where he rolled his ankle in Anaheim. He was red hot, and he was raking. I remember saying, I was discussing with my buddies, like, the Yankees have a lot of injuries, but, they just can't lose Clint Frazier. That's how valuable I was holding him at that point, because he was really performing. And it's a shame to see that him not being able to catch fly balls is why he can't make him be on the major league team. I feel bad for him, but, man, just get to work on that, and hopefully he has a good spring.
You mentioned Giancarlo Stanton, too. I don't really view Stanton as a spring storyline, just because Aaron Boone mentioned earlier this week that he's likely going to get more DH at-bats than in the outfield. To me, the storyline is just, can Giancarlo Stanton make it to Montreal when the Yankees play the Blue Jays at the end of March, healthy and not on the injured list? I don't care what Stanton does this spring. I just want him to stay healthy.
I guess, but I do think there's a good amount of people that care about how Giancarlo Stanton's going to look in the spring, because remember, he still has so much to prove in pinstripes. And granted, that's going to come in the regular season and especially in October. But people need a reminder that, hey, we have the 2017 NL MVP, and he's still relatively young, and he still should be very good. And he needs to remind people that he is that guy. And I think that starts in spring training. And if he has a bad spring and he gets hurt and all this stuff, he is really just going to have a miserable experience in New York, because if he doesn't figure this thing out sooner than later, it's just going to lead to a whole mess. So I have him as a storyline because he's more coming in as a question mark, and it's a question that needs to be answered again, like you said, by the time the Yankees get to Montreal.
What do you think about first base? Because I like Luke Voit. He's a decent player.
Yeah.
And, of course, now DJ LeMahieu doesn't have to play first base anymore, but Mike Ford's getting pretty close.
People forget how good of a hitter Luke Voit is. So I never really viewed this as – I don't really view Mike Ford as a real option to be the Yankees starting first baseman, because I'm aware of how good of a hitter Luke Voit is. People forget that this dude – he was batting north of 280. He was leading the team in home runs at one point, in RBIs. He was tough to get out in that batter's box. And that injury derailed the season. But he had his procedure. He healed. He's got surgery. He's back. Luke Voit has shown – there's nothing you've seen of Luke Voit in pinstripes that shows that he can't hit the baseball. He's a very, very good hitter. And I don't expect, again, Mike Ford to really knock him out of his spot. I don't think that's really in the realm of possibility. I could be dead wrong, because the Yankees do need a lefty bat. They need some type of threat from the left-hand side. But I'm reminded every time of how good of a hitter Luke Voit is. And it's going to be tough to get him out of that spot at first.
Especially if Andujar can play first base well. You look at him as, like, are you only going to carry one first baseman with Andujar being the backup there if he performs defensively at first base? Because I think both still have options for AAA. So that also plays a factor too.
Yeah. With all due respect to Miguel Andujar, I do not want to see a fielding glove on his left hand at any point during the season. Unless they're up 15 runs to the Boston Red Sox or to the Kansas City Royals. Yes, I mentioned the Red Sox with those 4 teams. I know that they're not that bad, but I like to think they are. But Miguel Andujar is a great hitter. Again, the Yankees have a ton of great hitters. Let him be himself. Let him be a great hitter. Don't put the pressure on him of putting him in the outfield. I see he's taking fly balls in left field. He's practicing at third base and just trying at first base. No, just leave him as a hitter. Let him be comfortable. Let him be who he is. It's okay that he's just a good hitter, because in the American League we have a designated hitter, and he will fit that role very well. He'll take a lot of pressure off him if he just gets in the box and hits. I don't want to see a glove on Miguel Andujar's hand in October. Not batting gloves. I don't want to see a fielding glove on his left hand in October at any point. I don't care how many runs are up in October. I don't care how many runs they're down. Do not put him at third base, at first base, or left field, unless he comes back and he's Adrian Beltre, a Gold Glover, and he made some tremendous strides. But I don't see it. So please, for the love of God, leave him as a designated hitter.
Eventually he's going to get on the field. It's just a matter of, again, the Yankees, the problem is they just don't, their DH is rotated. Now that means they're going to slow his process up, which is good. You don't have to play him every day right away, especially coming off the injury that he had. But at some point you could maybe put him in a game against the Orioles, or put him in against the Royals, or put him in against the Mariners at this point, because they're terrible.
In the least pressured spots, like when you're up 20 runs against these teams, or you have Garrett Cole on the mound one day against the Royals or whoever, sure, put him wherever you want, because chances are the Royals and Orioles don't have the capable players to put the bat on the ball against Garrett Cole on most days. Obviously, everyone has bad days. But if you're playing, I don't know, let's say, there's no one in the American League. Let's say you're playing the Dodgers on Sunday Night Baseball like you were last year, which isn't happening this year because they're not playing the NLS. But regardless, say you're playing in a big game in the regular season, Miguel Andujar better not be in the field at any point. But he should be in the lineup. He should be the DH. Giancarlo Stanton is very capable of playing left field. These other guys are very capable of playing in the field. Miguel Andujar, unfortunately for him, is not capable of really playing a strong position in the field. So let him be himself and let him hit. I get it. He's going to be in games. He's going to be in the field once in a while. We're going to have to really sit on the edge of our seats when a ground ball's hit the third base and wait for him to throw to first. I get it. It's going to happen. But let it happen in the least pressure points and at least pressure situations possible. That's my point, Miguel Andujar.
So our last big topic before we wrap up the show with our final thoughts. Of course, you can go to Pinstripe Prospects and you can check out our top 50 prospects list. It's a really good list. We had a good committee together. We got some great insight. There's a formula out there that you can check out of how we did it. So there is mathematics behind this. We're going to dive into more of these prospects down the road as we get into March, get into minor league spring training once the rosters come into play. But James, I want to get your thoughts. Are there one or two big prospects or players that you have your eye on going into this year?
Yeah, I have two. And one is really a guy that kind of fell off the radar, and I want to see if he can pick back up. Esteban Florial. He was the Yankees top prospect. He showed tremendous talent at times, especially in Major League camp. Like, I just don't, for the life of me, can't understand what happened to him. And I'd like to see if he could bounce back. And the second guy I had is Luis Medina. I remember hearing about Luis Medina during Severino's big 2018 run. Like, oh my God, we have another Severino in the system throwing 100 miles an hour with a good slider and plus this, plus that. He has to get a grip on his control. A career 7 walks per 9 innings. Can he get a grip? Granted, he was better when he went to Tampa. He was 2 walks per 9 innings. His control improved towards the end of the year. But I want to see that over the course of a full season. I don't want to see 7 walks per 9. That number has to come down because, again, that is a lot of talent packed into one player. Luis, triple digits. It doesn't come – well, nowadays it might, but out of a starting pitcher, it doesn't come often. So if they get him right, if the Yankees' investment in analytics really can somehow develop these pitchers like Luis Medina, and he could become and fulfill that potential of maybe being a frontline starter, it'll help a world for their future with their pitching. So Luis Medina is really the guy I'm keeping an eye on in 2020.
Medina's going to be interesting, especially second half, as you mentioned, with Charleston and Tampa. The control was a lot better, and the strikeouts were really high. So keep an eye on Medina this year. I have 3 prospects that are really not that high on the radar, but players that either I've talked with or I've covered that I think you got to watch in 2020. One of them is Kevin Alcantara. A lot of people talk about Jason Dominguez, the Martian, everything like that, and he hopefully will be a great player. Alcantara was 17 years old. He got the jump up to the Gulf Coast League last year after playing a little bit in the Dominican Summer League. When I talked to him, I was impressed by his poise for a young player. He's a guy that has the tools. As I mentioned, he moved up quickly, so don't lose him in the shuffle. He's a guy I think that's going to surprise a lot of people and jump up on the radar in 2020. Another player, I would go to the mound and TJ Sikkema, one of the Yankees' high draft picks last year. He's very deceptive with his arm angle. He drew praises from the Stat on Yankee coaching staff last year, and he was only there for a couple of starts because of all the innings he threw at Missouri. He has a variety of pitches, and he shows a lot of competitiveness, a lot of toughness. He talked about with me about how he looks to a guy like Max Scherzer, who went to the same school as him in Missouri. So keep an eye on Sikkema as he bumps up his innings this year. He's going to get more of a look, and I think you'll be impressed by him. And the other is Ezekiel Duran. The Yankees have a lot of middle infield guys in the lower levels that they're going to have to try to find positions for. I would put Josh Smith in that formula as well, who had a good hit tool with Staten Island. But Duran showed off the power with the Staten Yankees last year, double-digit home runs, and he made improvements with his plate discipline, something he struggled with in Pulaski, but he worked on it with the pitch recognition. So we'll see if that carries over to Charleston, where, again, there's going to be a lot of competition the Yankees have at the Charleston and Tampa levels for those infield spots. But Duran, he also got on the radar this past year, so they're going to look to see which one of these guys emerge and make that next step up this season.
Yeah, I'm definitely intrigued by Alcantara. I do think he has tremendous potential. I like his bat. Just 17 years old. Let's see how he develops. I think that's the one guy on your list that I'm really also keeping a little bit of an eye on.
So we're going to try to wrap up the show, a little bit of final thoughts. And what we do in final thoughts is something that neither of us have touched on that we want to get across at the end of the show. So, James, what's on your mind that we haven't gotten to that you want to get to as we wrap up episode 2?
I kind of want to start with Gerrit Cole's press conference. So and honestly, Gerrit Cole in general, how he's already been acting down there. It's so obvious that this guy is a leader in the room, and he's going to be a leader in the clubhouse and teaching these guys the ins and outs of pitching or what he learned in Houston per se. So his press conference, they asked him, a question about what he was telling his teammates, because there was a video of him talking to the pitchers in the tunnel or by the bullpen, and he went on this complete rant about pitching in general, about where do I want to miss, what do I want to do, this or that. This guy is such a knowledgeable pitcher. He really is invested in the ins and outs of pitching, and you're paying $324 million for the talent, obviously, but you're getting a lot more than just the talent. This is a guy that's going to make everyone in the room a lot better than they are.
Especially when you see like the picture of him talking with everybody, and you see how, like you said, how deeply analytical he gets when he talks. It was really interesting to watch him conduct his first spring training press conference on Thursday. So I agree with you there. I'm going to touch on a little bit on the coaching staffs. We'll get into the upper levels as we get down the road. Our own Rob Pimpsner broke some of the lower level coaching assignments that were interesting to me. Staten Island and the New York Penn League is going more a college route with their pitching and hitting coaches. Dustin Glenn, the pitching coach, who comes over from Ball State, and Ryan Chipka, the hitting coach. So they move on as Travis Phelps and Ken Joyce move up to Trenton this season. So they're going with more of a college route. We saw kind of the Brooklyn Cyclones go a college manager, so that's something to keep an eye on. And also Preston Claiborne is deciding. He's in the GCL West squad as the pitching coach. So seeing a little bit of a blast to the past with Preston Claiborne. So I thought that was pretty cool to touch on. Also, we'll wrap up with Gary Sanchez. He's apparently experimenting with a new catching technique, going to put his D in the ground this year, James. And I think that's going to be another thing to watch in spring training is how Gary Sanchez's defense is, as we talked a little bit about last week.
Mm-hmm. Courtesy of Tanner Swanson, a guy who really developed Mitch Garver down in Minnesota. They said that that stance that he's teaching Gary Sanchez had a lot of success for Garver in Minnesota. So I know we're touching on coaching right now. I'm really excited to see what Tanner Swanson can do with Gary Sanchez. I mentioned last podcast, the Yankees are doing a lot around the development of Gary Sanchez. And I think Tanner Swanson should have a very nice impact on him. And it's starting early, teaching him new things about how to be a catcher, essentially. So that's a really thing I'm going to be looking at in the spring, how Gary Sanchez looks behind the plate. And if he looks good, look no further to thank anyone other than Tanner Swanson.
So as we wrap up the show, I want to give all of you listeners out there some of the articles that are out on our website right now. Again, Rob Pimpsner has the news on the lower level minor league coaching assignments. Some of them, a lot of them, some managers aren't finalized, but you could check that out at pinstripeprospects.com. Robert Coles talks about the shortstop position in Gleyber Torres. Brian Birdie had some of the reaction to the James Paxton injury. So you want to check that out as well. A lot of great articles here at pinstripeprospects.com. Again, follow us on Twitter at Pinstripe Pros. Like us on Facebook. Follow us on Instagram. Follow us on YouTube. We have videos of all these great prospects that we have our eyes on the ground, our ears on the ground, and we have video. So if you want to see a particular player, I'm sure it's on our video upload list on YouTube or somewhere on our Twitter page. Go check it out. It's some really great stuff in terms of the video coverage that we bring to you on all the players in the Yankees system. Again, if you want to give your thoughts throughout the week, we'll try to put out some Twitter questions, but also you can call in our voicemail line that we just had set up, 908-376-6360. Again, it's 908-376-6360. Subscribe to us wherever you listen to your podcast on iTunes. Give us that 5-star rating. Tell us what you want to hear, what guests you want to hear. We're happy to listen to your suggestions as we launch season 2 of this podcast. James, how can listeners follow you on Twitter?
Follow me on Twitter at O'Connell and NY. You'll see me yelling about the Knicks on there, talking about the Yankees, and nowadays talking about a lot of golf and Tiger Woods. So my Twitter's full of everything. So give me a follow on Twitter at O'Connell and NY.
You can follow me on Twitter at Rickinator555. That's at RICK, letter I, Nader, like in Terminator, and 35. So again, thank you all for tuning in this week. We'll be back next week, kind of talk more spring training stuff, get ready for the first game on the 22nd against the Blue Jays. So until then, this has been James O'Connell. I'm Ricky Keeler saying have a good weekend, and we'll see you back here next week for more Yankees coverage.
Later.